You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. All right, exciting times at the moment. So I've got Harun on to talk to him about his hunting journey, and his one is really interesting to me because he obviously has a lot to do with the Hunters Campfire podcast. And, you know, at the time of recording this, Ian's is just about to come out, one we did a couple of weeks back. So really good guys, them. And I know that they've been instrumental in your journey. And mate, yeah, really appreciate you coming on the podcast to have a chat. And even, mate, making it worse for you, it's the first day of Ramadan, and you know you must be doing it tough because I have no idea how you guys do it. I get the intermittent fasting I get, but the no water. It's man, massive respect there because I'd battle, I reckon.
Yeah, no, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Matt. You know, I was really excited when I got that message from you. And yeah, it means it's the first day of Ramadan, and trust me, it gets easier. It's more to do. It's just more of a spiritual thing rather than a physical thing. For this 1 month, we basically are giving up the things that we love the most. We're giving it up for the sake of God, and that's the reason we do it. And that's where the power comes from. You know, that's a spiritual power that comes from. So, yeah, even in my office, everyone asks me because everyone's eating and drinking around me, and they feel bad for me, as in we're doing this in front of you. But I said, look, this is the test. This is what it is. The more you guys do it, the more blessings I would get, you can say. So, alhamdulillah, I'm all good. The first day is done and dusted. It was the first couple of days are definitely hardest, but it gets easier from there.
I remember I obviously am big into my sports, being a PE teacher, and I remember Hazem Al-Masri playing like elite level NRL and still doing Ramadan and not breaking his fast. And man, I sit there and go, playing the top level of rugby league and not drinking any water and training and doing everything as per normal. It's a real testament to character too. So I get that whole premise of what you guys do. And as I said, hats off to you guys because I reckon it's a definite challenge, and it's great to see you guys doing things like that to get in touch with that spiritual side.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, mate, let's talk your journey because I have been watching, as I do on social media, it's everywhere, and having you be on the Hunters Campfire, which I listen to as well. And, mate, it's awesome to hear because I think we have a very similar sort of story in the sense of chasing them in public land and it not being an easy task because it is more challenging than my experience with private as well. So how did that all come about, and when was it that you sort of went, I'm going to get in touch with the Hunters Campfire boys to try and pick their brain?
Right. So I'll give you a bit of a context before I sort of get into that, because everything sort of kind of led towards me getting in touch with them. So I came to Australia back in 2020. So hunting was not new to me when I came to Australia. I've been my family. I've been part of a family that has been hunting for many, many generations back in India. But sadly, in India, hunting was banned somewhere in the middle of 1970. So my father, his father, and everyone. So they used to do what we do basically back in India. So I grew up around hunters, listening to their stories. I could not, obviously because of legal reasons, could not hunt, but I grew up around hunters. So I've always wanted to get into this space, and part of the reason for me moving to Australia was hunting as well, because it does offer one of the, I believe, it does offer one of the best hunting grounds in the world, world-class hunting grounds, definitely. And you don't get the opportunity that we get, that you can hunt 12 months a year, because the deer species are considered as pests in any other part of the world. So that and many other reasons, I moved to Australia in 2020 due to COVID. Couldn't apply for the license for the next 2 years. Fast forward, I applied for my license, firearm license, in 2021. I got it in the end of, towards the tail end of 2021, got my R license and everything sorted. Planned my first public land hunt. Look, at that time, I did not know the difference between public land hunting or there's a private land that you need to hunt. All I knew was there is this R license and these guys provide access to land and we can go hunt there. I did not know about the concept of private land hunting at that point of time. Yeah, so I can never forget my first trip, honestly, because at that time, I don't know anyone in Australia. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any hunting friends. I did not know about all the different hunting groups that there are on the various groups that are there on Facebook. I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos of different people. I think I've watched almost every video, I think, and I thought I was a hunter. Now it's time to go and conquer public land. And reality soon hit me the first time I went there. I thought I would just, deer would just walk towards me. All I need to do is just walk around and there will be deer walking and then I can take a shot. But yeah, reality hit me quite hard and I found myself, God knows doing what. And there was trip after trip after trip. I was struggling. A lot. I think I went about for 7 or 8 trips without even finding a single sign. I used to find sign, but I don't know whether at that time that was deer sign because you find kangaroo, wombat sign, everything, right? So no clue whatsoever. So then one of my mates, he told me about all these different groups that are on Facebook, and then there are hunting groups that you have. You can join them, and you can learn from them and all of that. So I started looking around, and I think, like a lot of people, I also started, requesting for private access because I had completely given up hunting on public land. I thought it was like finding needle in hay, and it's just impossible. And living in Brisbane, there are not many options for us to go hunting. When in terms of productive forests, you have either Nundle, Tugelo, or Hanging Rocks. Those are the nearest forests that are there, which holds deer. There is Severn for goats. So not many options like Sydney guys and the Melbourne guys. They have a lot of options around there. So did not get a good response from the private property owners, obviously for obvious reasons. They don't know me. This foreigner boy. How can we trust him? And and that's when I actually saw one of the podcasts of the Hunter's Campfire on Severn State Forest, because my first trip was actually for deer, right? And I did not know much. I wasn't really interested in goats. I was more wanted to get into the deep end of the game. Who cares about goats and stuff? So that's when I heard the podcast from these guys about Severn State Forest. And these guys are also local, like they're from Brisbane as well. So they provide a lot of information about these forests, Nundle, Severn, Pilliga, which are, close to Brisbane. And that got me interested. And after listening to their podcast, I did my first trip. First, I didn't even know about Severn State Forest back then. So I came to know from them. And then I did my first trip over there. And I would consider it lucky. I don't think I, did anything. I was just walking and I came across a trophy billy, which is a 38 inches. When I measured, I didn't even know it's my trophy is outside, but I didn't even know that it was a trophy. I just thought, oh yeah, I just shot a goat. I'm so happy, and that's when I wrote to them. I appreciated their podcast, the information that they gave, and I was really. And then I did not expect them to get back to me, but yeah, they were really happy about it, and I heard about it, and then they offered me, more help if I want to get onto deer. And that's when I did another podcast with them where we went through Tagalo on map. Can you believe it? I did not even know about, online scouting before I spoke to them. They opened up a map and they told me, let's open up Tagalo on Google Earth. And I was like, why? And they told me why you need to do that. So I understood the importance of actually studying your forest before you even go. And yeah, it opens up a lot of avenues once you understand the concept of scouting your forest even before you reach the forest. It changes the game completely, and it has completely changed at least my game. Since then, I hope there was a bit of a context and then leading to it. I hope I did not take too long to answer your question.
No, not at all. Everybody has a different journey, and that's what I love hearing. And that's why I love the podcast. I love chatting to new people and hearing their story, how they got into it, how they've become successful, and who have helped them along the way, or what the tips and tricks are going forward. So I really enjoy the fact that those guys putting out the podcast have been a positive influence on you. And I think that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, was for me to learn, but for others that potentially can also learn from my guests and my experiences as well. And yeah, it's a great thing to hear people getting deer or getting whatever they're chasing and learning and just getting better, and especially growing what we do, because I do feel that we constantly are up against it, and there's always something coming out that is anti-hunting or anti-shooting or something along those lines. And I think it's really important that we get more people involved, and hence why I sort of reached out, because I like what you do and you send a positive message, and that's something that we need more people doing. Now, it takes a lot of time and effort to do, like whether it be YouTube or putting things up there. And then there's a lot of people who are super cagey and they don't want to do that. And they don't want to say, hey, I'm going to this region because it holds deer, or I'm going to this forest, or things like that. And I sort of get both sides, but, I sort of look at the big picture and go, without the numbers of hunters and shooters, we're going to lose a lot of what we have. And I think you see that up where you live, and the reason there's no public land up there. And that's on the back of that there was, obviously for politicians, there was more people who wanted it gone than to keep it. Or in that context is what I'm talking about. I don't know the exacts, but it's what I fear a lot, is because I've had mates that I've introduced to hunting when I first got into hunting, and obviously starting out was not a successful hunter, still probably am not a successful hunter, but they got out of it, and they got out of it very quickly, because similar to what you said before, and that resonated with me, saying I thought I was just going to walk into a forest. Apparently deer are everywhere. Like if you read the newspapers, they're in plague proportion. It's going to be like shooting a rabbit. And you know what? That wasn't the reality. And so a lot of people that got into it went, oh, this is way too hard. I didn't think hunting was going to be like this or this difficult. I'm out. And that's what we don't need. We sort of need to, yes, get new hunters, but we need to make sure that our retention rate of new hunters is high as well, because there's no point getting all these people in. And it's never been a better time to get people in after COVID and after, the issues with the supply chain, and people were worried about where their food was going to come from. And there's a bit of an awareness about that. Then on top, you've got the great role models overseas, such as, Joe Rogan and Steve Rinella and Cameron Hanes and what those guys are doing. So it's never been a better time to get new hunters into what we do. But then the retention rate is something that it's like, well, it's great that we're getting more people in, but are we losing a lot of those people too? And as you said, you sound very similar to me. private access has been extremely difficult to come by. And to the point, I still probably don't have what I would call like my own private access. That's been super difficult to get. And I get it. As you said, these guys don't know me. I'm not a local. I'm not a farm. I'm not out there on the farm. Why are they going to let me on their property too? Get it. And I'm not having a go at them. But that becomes a problem too. It's just like I'm really stubborn and pig-headed. And that, for me, hunting is this massive challenge. So I was like, yeah, I love this. I'm not getting out of this. And if it takes me, 10 years to get a deer, it'll take me 10 years. That's fine. But a lot of people aren't like that too. And I get it.
No, 100%, 100%. Look, sadly, hunting is always it is always going to be, it is always targeted. We will always have competition, may it be from the politicians, or anti-hunters, or, from the culling, what's going on currently as well. And that's what I try to do as well through, because I have gone through that journey and I have gone through that pain of actually, and I was at the brink of giving up, to be very honest. I was actually, if I get private access, fine. If not, then I'm never going to get it. And that's what I try to avoid. And that's where I offer, my mentoring sessions with, a lot of new guys who are either new to hunting, or they have been hunting for a while but have been struggling, and that is, I think, one side of it is it's a very satisfying feeling when you actually look at their eyes, light up when they actually spot a deer and they get to shoot it. That is one side of it. But the other side, you can say I'm a bit selfish, because I want my hunting to be there, not just for myself, but for my coming generation as well. So the more hunters there are, the more hunters we can retain. That is going to secure or safeguard our future of hunting as well.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's important. And I've always been sort of an advocate to try and have the podcast as a real positive message and be promoting, ethical, law-abiding hunting, and also promoting hunting as best I can and as positively as I can as well. And that can be challenging because some people don't understand what we do. And that's cool. I get that too. It takes all personalities to, live in this crazy world that we have. And I do, I actually like that, to be honest, because I don't want everybody, I've said it before, I don't want everyone doing the same stuff because we'd all be like robots. What I do like is that people that are sort of have that open mind, who are willing to discuss and talk about things and not be closed-minded to say, oh, it's got to be that way or it's got to be that way. And I try and do that as much as possible too, even with guests. I'm happy to have guests on that challenge my point of view or understanding and have that conversation with me. And that's a good thing. I've never shied away from that in my life, because I feel that's how you grow as an individual and that's how you learn. And just because I have a belief in something doesn't mean I'm correct. And I think that that's really important, that we are open-minded as hunters and try and see the other side and see why they're against it. Now, I'm still really curious, and one day I'll probably get somebody on that's complete opposite side of us, and just to try and work out why, because I don't personally understand it. I don't understand how something that has been a part of our civilization forever and why humans exist is seen as such a bad thing now. And, I have my personal opinions about farming and things like that. We need farming because of the mass population that we have. But you can't say that hunting's not probably better in the sense that, it's free range. The animals don't know it's coming. They're not designed for a purpose just to feed the masses. And we could talk forever about that. We need it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have farmers or farming. That's definitely not the case. We can't have all hunters, because that would be, there wouldn't be much out there to shoot. It'd be harder than it is now. But it's a really super interesting thing. And, I've got some pretty exciting news. Actually, I haven't said it on the podcast yet, but I've also, through the Shooters Union, decided that I was going to be an R license instructor. And I'm hoping that I'll also do the firearms license instructing too. So I'll keep people posted that. So if you do have people down here in Sydney that you want to get accredited, I'll be offering them up soon, because I figured that's only going to help the cause as well. And the more things I can do personally to try and increase numbers and keep that retention, that's got to be a win for all of us. So I love the fact that you're mentoring and you're talking to people. That's a great thing.
Yeah, it means, you mentioned something about people, giving up as well, and we spoke about that. So the other side of it is because public land, as you know, public land hunting comes with a lot of challenges, right? You are up against many other hunters, hunting pressure. The deer are definitely more flighty, and in terms of the terrain, so what happens is, what I have come across when I'm going with some of the new hunters is, when they are going with someone who's trying to show them the ropes, they expect them to show the spots, and that's what and when they see that you have to go through all the hardships to get a deer, they feel, oh, this is too difficult. I will just go the easy way, which is private land. And that's what I not try to do. So what I try to do is try to make it as easy for them, make it sound, because you will hear it a lot of times everywhere that, public land hunting is hard, or you can never get a deer there. It's very hard. You can't, let alone shoot. Seeing a deer itself is a challenge. But what I feel is, through platforms like yours, we should be trying to make it sound not so hard. It is, once you understand so what we need to, basically what I'm trying to say is, what we need to convey a message is, understand the concept. And if you understand the concept, then it becomes very easy, because deer in general, in my very limited experience and humble opinion, they are a predictable animal. They have patterns. And yeah, there are exceptions. They do make exceptions. They do things out of their normal routines, but they don't like to do that. Once you understand the deer behavior and what they do and why they do, then it becomes easier. I'm not going to say very easy or walk in the park, but it becomes easier. Then there are different processes that you can follow. And especially, after talking to the guys at Hunters Camp, and after going through the map that I told you of Tagalo, then I started to understand, how do I filter down the gigantic forest that I have in front of me? How do I filter down to the places which can hold deer? Deer are going to be everywhere. I believe deer will be everywhere. It's just, you need to understand their moving patterns. And if you do that, it becomes easier. And that's what I want to get the message out, is public land hunting, although it comes with challenges, is not, it's not the most difficult thing in the world. Once you grab the concepts, it becomes easier. That's all I can say.
I'm with you, but I would see an opposing viewpoint, in the sense that deer are predictable and forests are large, and once you have a bit of an idea, that you can narrow it down and the like. I completely agree with everything you just said in that sense. Yep. I sort of go the opposite way and say that state forest is hard, because I feel if you say to somebody it's going to be easy, it's expected. Or if it's not, that it is definitely achievable. And it definitely is achievable. So I think the terminology needs to be looked at. But I'm very big on being sort of transparent and honest, and sort of saying, listen, state forest, it's not like private land. I've got a deer in private and I've got a deer on public, and they are two totally different stories. They are two very, very different hunts. And it's quite funny that whilst the deer I shot in the sort of exact same position at the exact same distance, and it dropped within the same distance, it even ran in the same direction. Like, even though those things were identical, totally different. Public land is not, in my opinion, from my experience, and it's limited, is very different. Seeing those deers, they're not even, as you said, I think you used the word flighty before, and I like that because that's so true. They're not as alert, they're not as scared, and they're not going to run as much. So you have a bit more leeway to make more mistakes. But then I think that if you're telling people that it's relatively easy and then they're going out and they're still unsuccessful, all of a sudden is that compounding the issue, and they're thinking, oh my God, he said this is easy and it's not, I'm out. So I see it from both sides. And to be honest, there's probably people out there that would be put off by how I say it's hard. And there would probably be the opposite as well, people that go, oh, it's easy, or it's not as hard as it's being made out to be, and do it a couple of times and go, oh, I haven't been successful. This is, I'm either not good at this, I'll just get out. I think everybody has their own sort of style and they're different. So I can definitely see where you're coming from and what you're saying, because I agree with you. It's not impossible. And it's about, what I would say is well, again, then we have to break down the hunter. I'm the first person to say one of the reasons I am not as successful as I probably should be is that I don't spend the time in the forest that I need to. I'm lucky to get 2 days in a forest. Generally, it's 1 full day and maybe half a day either side, and that's traveling and et cetera, et cetera. That is not a long time for me to pattern a forest, have a good understanding of where deer are, how they're moving. So it's sort of like, yes, I do the e-scouting, but it's a little bit of hit and hope as well, because even though you e-scout, you might get to an area and it's changed, as I was talking about with Ian, it's been cut down, or something's gone on that it's completely different to what it looked like on Google Earth, because they're not current maps, they're not like updated every 24 hours. So that's something different. But then I do know people that have gone out, don't really have any experience or don't even pattern deer, to be honest. And they've just done hours and hours and hours of walking around the bush and finding sign. And the more time you're in there, the higher probability you have of getting a deer. So I think it's such a multifaceted thing. And then we talk about hunting styles. So I don't know how you like to hunt, but I'm not a big person on just sitting and waiting. I do it for a little bit and I get bored and I'm like, nah, I got to move. I'm pretty sort of, I love my physical activity. And that's part of what hunting is for me too, is I want to get out there. We were talking before, I've just done an 8.5K run before the podcast, and that's on the back is I just love being physically active. So yeah, it's very rare that I can sit still on a spot for an hour. That's pushing the limit, and I'm starting to twitch. But what about you? How do you do it?
I'm exactly like you. It's very, very hard for me to sit in one place. I think the longest that I have sat in one place was about 45 minutes, and that's nothing. If you're on a good game trail and there's a buck or a stag that's going to use that game trail, is going to revisit his rubs, then you might find yourself sitting there for hours and hours. That's not me. I can't do that. It's very hard. So I'm more of a walk and stalk person, but I kind of approach hunting very technically. I like to, have a very scientific approach when it comes to, hunting a patch of land on public land. Oh, that's the basic thing, that I only hunt on public land. I've never hunted on private land, so I don't have much experience on private. So all of my experience, what I talk, will be on public land. So I spend hours and hours on Google Earth. I think, and I totally believe that spending time in the bush definitely it's definitely good. But even before you hit the forest, I believe that you should be spending a lot of time on Google Earth, trying to understand. Maybe not first try to filter out 3-4 good spots and then look at them hard, try to make patterns, where the agricultural land would be and how would they come in, where would they be feeding, trying to make some mental notes of that land. And so that when I go there, I have this plan in my head, and I keep a backup of a black backup plan. If that doesn't work out, go to another spot that I have shortlisted. And yes, walk. Once you're there, a lot of things change. On Google Earth, it might look like it's a patch of pine, but it might have been logged. Yeah, so can't help with that. But doing a lot of scouting, and one other particular thing that I also do is I don't, especially when I'm scouting a new forest, is I don't have downtimes. I just don't hunt the morning and the evening times. I also utilize. I'm pretty much in the forest. I have a camp set up. I'm pretty much in the forest. I'll have my food supplies and everything. I'll be in the forest trying to understand where the deer are actually bedded as well. Where are they coming from and where are they sitting? Where are they bedding? Where are they eating? Trying to understand their deer behavior within their natural habitat as well. Because what I have noticed is many of the hunters, they focus on that first light and last light, which is, in my opinion, yes, of course, 100% the most productive time. But this other part of the day that you can still hunt and you can still be successful. And that's, I think, one of the very key thing that I think a lot of hunters should focus on is to hunt the deer in their native habitat as well during the day, whether it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Once you understand where they live and what they are doing there, then you pretty much are opening up the whole day. You're opening your chances of a successful hunt pretty much for the whole day, not just relying on those 2 last hour sessions in the morning and in the evening. And that's what I do as well. Most of the deer that I have hunted, majority of them have been outside those windows. I've hunted deer at 2 o'clock, at 1 o'clock as well. So I'm in their habitat. I'm in their homes. And another thing that I have, and this is purely from my experience, is in those morning and evening sessions, deer are much more wary about their surroundings. And they're that much harder to get, in my opinion, because they are trying to get back to their homes and they are very alert during that time. But once they reach their homes, I feel they sort of put their guards down a bit. And that's what I've noticed, is because I'll give you an example. The recent red deer that I had shot a couple of months ago, it was a spiker, and I had a mate with me who was fairly new to hunting, and we were going through some gnarly a pine block which had a lot of blackberry in it, and we were going through that. We were making a bit of noise, and we were following this heavily used game trail, right? And we were finding sign after sign, and the sign got fresher and fresher as we got into that pine block. And he was telling me, bro, this way we are only going to spook the deer because we are making so much noise. I said, let us just keep following this game trail. And the analogy that I gave him is, when you're at home, aren't you, and you can challenge this analogy, fine. When you're at home, you have your guards down, right? You're not worried about someone, coming in and mugging you or hitting you or whatever. You're relaxed. And that's what I believe the deer are doing there in their homes as well, because they know that they share the space with other species like kangaroos, wombats. They are moving, they're making noise. Yeah, we are going to be conscious about making specific, not making specific noises like breaking of big branches and all of that, but breaking of small twigs and brushing the trees and all. Those are all natural sounds, and the deer, in my experience, they don't get bothered with that. So we still kept following that game trail, and we had that red deer at 40 meters standing right in front of us, and and I just signaled him, there's a deer, and we got down, and we were both still, and I took a shot. So in my opinion, and that was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So, in my opinion, and that's what I do, I pretty much hunt throughout the day, especially when I'm scouting a new forest. So I pretty much take the whole day until I get a deer. I don't come back to camp. That's sort of my approach, you can say. I'm very reluctant, stubborn, you can say.
No, I feel you. I think it comes down to when you're hunting as well. I'm super keen for the colder weather to come because the recent trip where I got my deer, man, it was hot. It was really hot. It was in the mid 30s. It was warm out there. It felt a lot hotter to the point, like, I think I knocked at least 5 liters of water down that day. And then probably, just some other drinks as well because it was hot. And we covered probably 20 Ks, I reckon, because I'm sort of the same. I like to move and cover and get an idea of what's going on in the area to then have a better understanding, a better idea or a better understanding to say, hey, this is where I potentially need to be, or this is where I need to go to, or what I need to do to hopefully put myself in the best position to get a deer. So I get it. So I'm really keen for this colder weather to pop along, especially coming into the rut.
It definitely gets easier.
Yeah. And then that's the other thing I love about hunting, isn't it? I reflect on everything I do. I like to evaluate. It's everything I do in life. And it's probably on the back of me being a teacher is that I always talk about personal reflection and evaluating your own practice. That comes down to gear as well. And I've been looking at it going, I carry a lot of gear. How can I start to change that up a little bit? And I still want to carry a lot of gear, but I want to do it in a better way. And I've started to move away from the backpacks and started to move into more the bum bag or the waist belt. So I've got the Hunter's Element waist belt, and then I've got a little 12-liter hydration pack that's just big enough to fit some other things in at the moment, because I got that after the recent hunt because I was sitting there going, okay, I want to carry a little bit more. I think that I want to get into that space of not having a big pack, but I want to be able to keep a lot of the stuff that I have on there, but I want to distribute it a little bit better. And I was finding I want to upgrade the chest rig, probably going to go the Moroka 30 wedge tail because I know it's a bit bigger, so I can fit some more things in that, and then run the Hunter's Element waist belt, run the Hydra Pack 2 that I'm running. It's a Mountain Design 12-liter one. And I think that's going to get to the point where I can cover a little bit more because I do like my training and I do like being as fit as possible. And I looked at after that 20K day, it was hard to get up the next morning. And I sort of sat there and went, well, why is it probably hard? I'm probably carrying way too much weight around that I didn't need. And I think that's the other thing is that I'm guilty of it. I'm carrying that around in case I get a deer. But the reality is that I'm doing so many kilometers where I'm probably not going to get a deer in that time. It's just extra weight that I don't need to be carrying. Let's carry some more limited sort of essentials. If I get a deer, I can always, rip out the back straps, take a leg or something, and then come back and even carry a pack then if I need it. But I think, so I'm starting to shift the way I hunt a little bit to do something similar to you, is to cover a lot of ground. Not faster, but definitely that it's easier for me to do, if that makes sense, because I think I'll be able to keep going. And that was one of the things. I think just the heat was draining. I think there was just multiple to it. And I just went, oh, why am I doing this to myself? I am a sucker for punishment, and I do love, putting myself through it and pushing the body. But yeah, let's make it a little bit easier. And then that next day, I cover a bit more and keep pushing along. How do you run? What do you run? And how does, if you're walking all day, are you carrying a lot of weight with you? Do you find that's an issue?
Hey, look, I am a big believer in simplicity. If you look at my backpack and if you look at the things I carry, you'll be amazed because I keep it very, very simple and basic. Like you said, I try to keep bare minimum stuff. Because I walk so much, about 20 to 25, even sometimes 30K in a day, I can't be carrying all that weight around me. So I don't even have a chest rig. I just have a a bino harness by Hunter's Element, just the strap, because that takes a lot of weight away from there, from your chest. And in my backpack, I have about 3 liters of water, basic snacks that I would need for the day, and a PLB and a snake bite and a first aid kit, and my knife. That's about it. uh, you don't really need anything, in my opinion. You don't really need, because I'm not, and it depends on where you're hunting as well, how deep you're going in as well. You know, in the forest in New South Wales, they have a very good, I believe that they have a very good road network. Wherever you're hunting, you have a road within a 2 kilometer or a 3 kilometer radius. Most of the forest that I'm talking about, it's not like Victoria where you go backpack hunting into the wilderness, hike out for one day and then you reach a spot. It's very different in New South Wales. So I try not to go too far away from the road, because trust me, like deer, they're not far away. Unless you're looking for a trophy hunter's approach would be different. But I'm more of a meat, hunter. I hunt for meat, so I find deer close to them, like at least like 1 kilometer, 500 meters, anywhere in New South Wales. So, and I try to keep it as light as possible, as simple as possible. I have a Tikka T3X Super Light, which is a very light rifle, weighs almost nothing, and I run a 3 to 9 by 40 scope, which is the most, or by Leupold, which is the most basic scope that you will get. So yeah, weight control, because after the first 5 kilometers, then your hamstrings are going to feel every little gram that you have in your backpack, and then you're going to feel it. So yeah, that's how that's what I carry in my backpack.
I think I've always done long hikes and carried a lot of weight, so that hasn't sort of been a super issue. What I've been noticing though, as I, and I've put my hand up for it, I've said it before, the slower the better you can go. And I move probably way too fast. And that has been something to, I guess, break the mindset, because I've never been in that. I am a very fast-paced person. That's just my life in general. So
you're a PE teacher, right? Yeah.
yeah. And even just hiking or just getting things done, going for a run, just get it done. That has always been the way. Get into the gym, get it done. And that's one thing I noticed with hunting. I find it difficult for me to slow down, like super slow. And then what I find is it's a different type of fitness in walking so slowly with that weight as well, as opposed to just walking. I find it so much easier just to walk fast with that weighted pack on, as opposed to, slowing right down, taking a couple of steps. And that's something that I was like, okay, now I'm starting to get better at that, of slowing myself down and making sure that I'm not moving so quick. And I know it's a cardinal sin to move quick. So I'm trying that, and it's working, but it's also like, all right, how can I make it a bit easier to move slower as well? So that's, it's definitely something that I've probably learnt the hard way. And that's probably where my journey is. I'm all about doing things on my own a lot, like teaching myself and putting myself in. I don't know. It's just how I've always been, of wanting that reward, but wanting to have earned it and to have, made it. Yes, it might take longer. And I put my hand up and say, completely agree. It'd probably be super easier to get a mentor, get people to help out, et cetera, et cetera. That's just not my personality type. I like to do things on my own, and I like to challenge myself. And that's one of the allures of hunting for me. So yeah, it's a really interesting one when you're talking about going to the minimal side, because I've gone sort of the opposite way, carrying way too much.
To be honest, I started off carrying a lot of weight on me. And as the time went on, I started shaving off stuff that I pretty much never used, to be honest. So I think it comes with experience and your hunting style, where you're hunting. And I think you will adapt to that eventually. And because, like I said, I don't hunt too far away from the roads because I like to harvest, if not all, most of the meat. I don't, just take the back straps, or I like to harvest the whole thing and to get it back to the camp. So I'm never more than a kilometer away from the road. And it's amazing. You will find a lot of deer close to the road. I feel it's a myth that deer are always just deep inside the forest, but I've always found them. The signs there. That doesn't lie.
Oh, look, I think deer do not look at the map and go, oh, there's a road there I need to keep away
100%.
from it. If they did that, we wouldn't be hitting deer on roads. We wouldn't, people wouldn't be seeing them cross the road. And I think that's one that, look, hunt how you want to hunt. Like, I've got no issue, and I'll put my hand up. There's a couple of blokes out there that do some big hike-ins, and they camp in there. That attracts me because, as I said to you, I like the physical component of hunting. So that is like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Throw it all in a backpack, get in there, camp in there, and hunt around that area, which is a long way away. I do really like the idea of that.
Yeah.
But you are so right. Is it just because they're like, I remember I went to Belanglo with one of the listeners to have a bow hunt, and the whole time on the way in, there's deer everywhere on the side of the roads. That's just deer are deer. They're just going to do wherever their good food is. It doesn't matter if it's a road there or that's 5Ks into the bush. They're going to be. They've got to eat. They've got to find water. They're going to bed down. If their area is next to a road, they're going to be there too. So I'm very much in agreement with yourself that you don't need to be going there. If you want to do it, by all means, go for it. And then you've got to say that there's a lot of hunters that probably don't do that. So you are probably increasing your odds from thinking about it logically. You're probably going to increase your odds the deeper you go because there's going to be less
100%.
people that are going to be getting in there, which that's not a bad thing either. So look, hey, do what you want to do. And I think that's where everyone needs to make those decisions and go, hey, what do I need to do to put myself in a position to be most successful? But as you said, it can be anywhere. You don't have to do that if you don't want to as well.
Exactly, 100%. Like that's why I said it totally depends on what style of hunting you prefer. I would love to do that. The backpack hunt in high country in Victoria. That's one of the things in my bucket list that I want to do. But like I said, if I'm just chasing meat, and if I've done the hard yards and I know where the deer are held up, where are they coming from, where are they going, and I have all of that data marked on my map, then the pieces come together, and that's where and you pretty much, it becomes a predictable game for you. And that's why in the beginning I said it's not easy from the at the face of it, but if we grasp the concept behind finding deer, it becomes a bit easier. And that's what I try to tell people as well, that it's not impossible. Just need to spend some time. And also another thing that I try to always tell people, and it's very hard for a new hunter. I definitely come from that as well, that as soon as we see deer, we take a shot, right? And if we take a step back and just observe the deer, even for 5 minutes, not even 10 minutes, if the wind's perfect and if everything's in your favor and you have all the time in the world, that's fine. But just observe the deer. What are they doing? How are they responding to sounds? How are they responding to different movements around you? You will learn a lot with just that 5 to 10 minutes that you just look at them. I have learned a lot, about them, and different deers are different. Like sambar are much more sensitive, I felt, to sound than a fallow deer. Fallow deer, by all means, it's a deer at the end of the day, but I feel they're the easy deer compared to the other species. But they all respond very similar in very similar ways. And if we just take a step back, not just hurry and just shoot it, you can learn a lot about the deer, and then the next time you approach them, you know how they're going to respond to your movements in the bush. And I think that's one thing that I kind of preach a lot.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I've probably learnt the most is they're not this superhuman creature, like, if that makes sense, that they are just an animal, that they have strengths and they have weaknesses. And you touched on it a little bit earlier about, I've heard people say, if you step on a twig, stay still for 5 minutes, which then I sort of go, there's animals moving through that space all the time that are 100%. Stepping on twigs, even deer. I remember back to the last rut, and I knew the deer were running towards me because they were stepping on twigs and making noise. So I sort of sit there and go, yes, the environment, they make noise. Is it a sound thing? They've got better hearing than we do, and I think that's just the shape of their ears and their ability to move their ear in directions. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they've got great hearing. Like, it's not the sense that's going to trigger everything.
Yep.
It's the smell.
100%.
And if you can get that wind right, if you can make sure that your wind is going in the opposite direction, you're hunting with the wind in your face, it is so much easier to find them and for them not to flee as much. And on my last hunt, yes, I got successful, but we saw a lot of deer. And each time the wind was in our favor and we had the opportunity to watch them and not spook them for a bit. And it was really interesting to see what we did to trigger them and what happened in how they left. And I've told the story about how I misfired the next day. So I got my first deer, but then the next morning I had 2 does at 40 meters. And it was super interesting. That was a really interesting one because we bumped a doe that took off like a bat out of hell. Now, she didn't wind us. She's heard something that's triggered her, but literally within 5 meters of where she went from was another 2 deer that did not move. And they sort of looked over our way. We were still, wind was good, and then they just went about their business. And then at some stage there, they got up. I was 40 meters away, turned broadside, and I pulled the trigger and misfire. So it wasn't ideal. But even then, after me ducking back down, cycling the gun, making noise, and it's funny because I hear a lot of people go, "Oh, you can't slide your bolt. You can't, you want to walk around with a round in the chamber." I'm against that personally, and from a safety perspective, I'm always pushing safety. I don't want to see anyone get hurt, not for the sake of just chasing a deer. So I was able to reload, clear the rifle, make sure everything's good, pop back up, and I still was able to have a second shot. They'd moved away because, yes, I'd made a little bit of noise, but they had no idea what was going on. So again, the wind, it's the thing I've learnt the most is that forget everything else.
100%.
Wind is key. And I think I've heard hunters, it's funny. I have heard other hunters, and I was with one other hunter. I remember it, that don't shut the car door. Like, it's really softly. And it's funny because I've done it in other things and found the deer haven't given a damn about the car door. Even on my latest trip, shooting, having a shot at something and then seeing deer 15 minutes later, not far from where I had the shot. So you sit there and sort of go, well, I think sometimes we talk these animals up, and I agree with what you're saying. It can be daunting and hard, and it can be a long process. But as you figure out more of the puzzle pieces, and as you get better at playing this game of hide and seek with them, you start to understand that they're not as delicate as that a lot of people make out. Or that's my opinion anyway. And I hunt mainly state forests, and there's been shooting at an animal. Like, if you think about it and say, hey, then the whole area is shot up or gone. That hasn't been what I've found. If you let it settle back down and 15 minutes later, there's animals coming around. Like, it's It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just a different way. But I understand why people say it, but I also sit there and go, I think we're giving them a bit too much credit sometimes too. And that's something to be mindful of. But yeah, wind is key.
100%. Like I have a very short story about the wind, how, and it relates to what you were saying about their hearing as well. I spotted a deer about 300 meters away. I was sitting on a gully, facing downwards, and it was feeding in the open, about 300 meters away. I'm making all sorts of noise while trying to set up the tripod for my camera and moving, breaking twigs and stuff. Nothing, because the wind was right on my face. Did not budge at all. Just for a moment, and I have this in video, just for a moment, the wind just twirled probably for 3, 4, 5 seconds. And I was looking at it through my binoculars. And in those 5 seconds, the deer it was a fallow deer, lifted its head and looked straight through my binoculars to me. It was looking at me at 300 meters. But that's how sensitive their nose is. And that's how important the wind is. I always say this to people that are with me. Don't worry about the noise. I'm not saying try to limit the noise as humanly as possible, but don't overstress yourself. You rather look for the deer rather than trying to look down and trying to save every bit of twig that you're moving around. As humanly as possible, try to avoid it. And what I've noticed is everything that you've said, I completely agree. The only thing that I would just challenge a bit is about the door. What I have noticed is deer, they're used to different sounds. Like we said, like we spoke about it, there are different animal species. There are cars moving around, there are bikers moving around, hikers moving, people, campers, everyone. They're used to sharing the space with every type of species, including human beings. They're used to this. It's normal for them. What they're not used to is abnormal behavior. If there's a car, when we are moving and we see a deer, we stop. When the car is moving, you will notice that they're standing right there doing their own thing. But as soon as you stop it, they bolt. That's unnatural for them. A human being, a normal hiker, just walking in the forest on a trail, doing his own thing is a natural thing for them. They don't get spooked by that. But as soon as there's this curious guy with a bright face looking at him curiously, that's unnatural for them. So what I try to do is avoid the unnatural behavior or sounds. Like if I see a deer, I put my cap down, try to hide my eyes as much as I can. If I have a gator on me, I try to cover my face so that they don't see my eyes or my face. I try to look it through my peripheral view. I try to avoid making, the zipper sound of my bag, up and down. These are all unnatural sounds to them. So these are what I try to avoid. These are small things, but can go a long way, in terms of, not spooking the deer.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying go out and make a heap of noise and slam your car doors and things like that. But I'm saying
No.
in my experience, I have definitely had that and definitely seen deer in state forests where it's been within, as you said, a couple 100 meters from a road where I've parked and because there's been a few times I haven't even thought about it. Just going, I want to get into the forest, hurry up, let's get going. And, I've been making a lot of noise and they're unnatural noises, but there's still deer there. Now, yes, have I spooked? Maybe there was more deer there and I spooked something. Yeah, 100%. And I'm not saying go out and make the noise. I'm with you 100%. The less noise you make, the better. The slower you move, the better. But I also think that wind is the big one and the rest, whilst you minimize that, I don't think they're game killers, if that makes sense. Yep. I think that they probably play a part and they play depending on the area. And I think, as you said, exactly as you said, if you're somewhere where there's a lot of cars that pull over and there's a lot of hikers, they're slamming doors. So the deer are probably going to be used to it in that area. But in other areas, they're probably only hunters are there. If they hear a door slam, they've never heard it before, whether they take off or they're on more high alert because something's unusual in their environment. Completely agree about that. I think there's definitely different places and different types. They are good at picking that up. I will say that. You are definitely correct in the sense that any unnatural sounds they definitely do pick up on. And their behavior will probably shift because of that unnatural sound. But yeah, definitely when you're just walking, a twig here and there, I feel is that that's a natural sound.
Exactly.
There's a million different animals that do that, etc. And you like to hunt the snowy mountains, as do I. And I on one of them, dead set shot, had a shot, and 5 minutes later, Brumbies walking straight past.
Exactly.
And you sort of sit there and go, well, was that shot a kill? Like, that's an unnatural sound, or is it maybe because it is in the snowies that they're used to that too? So I'm with you there. There's some definite differences in sounds, and it's good to be wary of them. But if you do make one, I wouldn't say, hey, you've just destroyed
It's
your
not
hunt
a game.
either.
It doesn't end your hunt. Exactly. 100%. And other thing that I feel is overrated is camo wear. As you will notice in my videos, I barely wear any camo. I just hunt in my blue jeans, which apparently is a big no-no when it comes to deer blue and yellow,
Eyesight.
apparently. Yeah, so I guess it has a place. Camo, definitely. I'm not completely neglecting it. It does have a place, but it's not the answer to everything, in my opinion. Unless you understand deer behavior and what really spooks them, the best camo in the world is not going to help you. Or scent eliminators. People talk a lot about that as well. They do a lot of stuff like putting their clothes in baking soda and I don't know whatnot. I smell like diesel engine. Wearing the same T-shirt for a couple of days, but I'm keeping the wind in my favor.
Yeah.
I still see deer. So and I totally agree with you that I think that's the most important. That's the most and only important thing is to keep the wind in your favor. That's the most important one. Other things, these are minor things in my opinion, will definitely help, but not game changers.
Yeah, exactly right. I completely agree with that. The wind's the key, and then the others, minimize them as best you possibly can, but they are not what's going to break it. However, that wind will break it. That goes from you have that swirl around or you have that come from behind you, it's done because they don't need to see you. Yeah. They will smell you, and we must smell like absolute stink because they just leg it.
All right. And one thing I want to point out that it's the wind. It's not in your control, right? It twirls a lot. And what happens is it's not practical that you're walking in a direction and the wind's constantly on your face. It's constantly moving, on your face. Sometimes wind does twirl. Sometimes it changes its direction briefly. So what I would suggest, what I do usually is just stand there, for like 5-10 minutes until the wind settles down, rather than keep moving on and spreading your wind. Just stay still for like 5 to 10 minutes and then start moving back again. Because at the end of the day, you can't really control the wind. Yeah, means you can see where start with the wind in your favor, but it can always change. So stay there for like 5-10 minutes and then move. If it's still consistently changed, then you need to change your direction, because everything in that direction for the next 300 to 400 meters might have already smelled you and they're already gone.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I love using my windicator because it gives me such a good... I think it's one of the most important things in your toolkit.
Correct.
That windicator, because you can have the best binos in the world, but if you don't know where that wind is going and you are spreading your scent and in the wrong spot, man, you're going to be looking at nothing anyway. So I am a massive fan of checking that, and I check that regularly. It's also a good thing to slow you down as well.
Even when sometimes there's minimal wind, that you don't even feel that there's wind around you, there will still be that tiny bit of wind, and which only a windicator, most of the time you can feel once you're more experienced into it, like you will feel the wind on the back of your neck or on your face, and you can gauge it. But there are those certain times when there's minimal wind, and you can't make out which direction that vindicator really comes in handy, because trust me, even that small bit of wind is going to just spoil your game completely.
Well, that and thermals. I find that a lot of people don't think so much about thermals and
Yep.
their impact. Obviously, early morning and late evening is probably when they're at their peak. But if you haven't got a windy day, especially in the morning, I find it's not usually as windy. So those thermals are definitely playing a part, but your windicator will set them off and show you what's going on with the thermals as well. So that's always handy to have. And I mean, realistically, it's not rocket science with thermals. In the morning, they're going to be going up, and of an evening, they're going to be going down. That's pretty much how they work because of the heat and whatnot. So it's it's just all part of it. Mate, we're in a really exciting time at the moment. What are your plans for the ruts? Have you got any, or what's going on?
No, sadly, it's the rut this year has and the last couple of years has been following exactly during this month. I think from next year, a couple of years later, it's because each year it moves back by about 15 days. So hopefully in the next couple of years, it is going to be out of the rut period. But having said that, I do have a hunt planned in as soon as we finish Ramadan. That is in April, second week of April, which I think in some places the fallow rut will still be there.
Yeah, still be good.
Still be good.
Yep.
So I do have a hunt planned in the South Coast forest. So hopefully I'll get onto something then.
Nice. Well, I think your timing will be not too bad, to be honest, because I was down the South Coast, or the Snowies, last year, because it does fall under that South Coast region. And I think we were too late. We sort of got the last day of croaking, or like the last day and a half, I would say. And that was at about the 17th. So you might just be all right down there, depending on where. So it might be good, man. So fingers crossed for you that you'll be able to get down there and hear something. But I was going to ask that earlier when you said, for Ramadan, you got to give up what you love the most. I was like, I wonder if it's hunting for him in this period. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge, but it's not even practical. Imagine trying to walk without water and food.
Correct.
So that's definitely not practical. But this is going to be my first crack at rut, if in case I catch it. And hopefully, I've been trying to learn about, the buck. Until now, it's just been about meat and trying to fill the freezer, because that's our staple food now. We don't buy meat from the store anymore. But with time, I am getting a bit selective with what I'm shooting, and moreover, with my hunting part, he's still new, so I'm giving him more of a chance to shoot than myself. These days, I'm shifting more towards shooting the deer with my camera. It's getting exciting for me to do that as well. But with time, I am getting a bit selective, and I hope I get a nice buck or a stag, whatever comes my way, red stag, whatever comes my way during this period.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I thoroughly.
Do you have something planned?
Yeah, no, I do. I got away and was scouting some areas and whatnot. So I found a couple of good areas I feel that are going to be probably pretty good in the rut. So the girls are there and the boys are just starting to move in. So I'm hoping that, I'll be definitely getting away in the next couple of weeks and hopefully do a couple of trips down down the snowies, and fingers crossed might be able to pull a buck out or something like that. Because
are you targeting fallows or red?
Yeah, I'll go fallow because last year, geez, I've got 2 goals. Last year, loved hearing the croaks, and I had a buck chase 3 does, and it was 7 meters from us. It was bloody unreal. So that's hooked me. So I want to be down there hearing croaks again. But I stuffed up and I didn't book the forests on midnight because last year I didn't need to, but it's now booked out. So I think I'll go to a different forest. So I'm doing some scouting and whatnot down there for that. That's cool. Get it. As I said, I can't be a advocate of getting more hunters and then get upset when I can't get a forest because or the forest I want because someone beat it to it. So that's cool. I have no issue there. For me, I've got the goal is I really want to hear a red roar.
Oh yeah.
And I'm hoping that's going to come.
I've never heard
come
it,
to
but
fruition.
From what I hear,
yeah,
it's pretty spectacular experience. Just
everyone says that. Yeah. So if I was that, I sort of see how excited I was about hearing croaking. And, man, I loved it, camping and listening to it all night. I don't think I slept, to be honest. I think I just laid there in my swag just hearing it going, this is just freaking awesome. So I want to get back down there, hear some croaking again because that was cool. If I harvest a buck, fantastic. If not, it is what it is. And then I'd love to hear the reds roar. That's the plans at this stage. But, yeah, we'll see how we go. It's one of those things, especially with the little ones at the moment, it makes it difficult to get away for long periods of time. So my wife's been amazing and letting me get out for a bit here and there. So, she does it tough with so many little ones all over the place. So it's sort of I'm trying to be very strategic in how much I get out and make the most of that time. So fingers crossed. But, yeah, the last trip was a really good one. So we'll wait and see on the next couple and see how we go. But there's always going to be more. That's what I sort of sit there and go, at the moment with the young ones, I don't want to wish that time away because it's so much fun and I love being a dad. So I sort of sit there and go, hey, whether it be another 2 or 3 years as they get more easier to manage, they're not as needy because my twins are only 18 months old. So they're still relatively needing a lot of things done for them. Whereas my 3.5-year-old, he's starting to get to the point where he can just do his thing and it's a lot easier. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years I'll be able to spend a bit more time, but that's part of it. That's part of the journey we call life and I wouldn't change it. So.
Sounds exciting, mate. Sounds exciting.
Mate, 100%. I'm super pumped. It's just a great time of year just to talk to people about it and hear stories. And, it's so hard not to get excited and pumped up about the whole thing because...
You're not helping me, by the way.
Sorry, man. I just... hey, as I said, a couple of years, Ramadan will keep moving back and you'll be able to get out there. I honestly think your timing's not going to be that bad, to be honest.
Yeah.
If it's second week, do you have the date? What date does Ramadan end?
Ramadan ends on the 9th or the 10th. I think it's 10 or 11th, and I'm off. I've already told my wife it's the second day I'm off.
I've been pegging the 12th is where I reckon it's at. So I reckon you could be well and truly on here. I'll be keen to see if you are heading down the South Coast way, if the 12th is where I think it's roughly going to be at, and it'll be interesting to see how you go.
Apparently in Nundle, it works from Hunter's Campfire. He told me it works like pretty much like clockwork, like 12th to the 18th.
Okay.
Is the peak. That's when they start, when they're at the peak of their croaking. And it happens every year at the same time, apparently. And
well, I mean, it does work on the photo period. So there is a little bit of discrepancy, like in days from my understanding and talking to a lot of people, but it's not crazy. Like they're not 4 weeks behind or anything like that. So I think if you have a general idea in those weeks, you're probably going to be definitely hearing them and just hoping for that cooler weather so they're a bit more active, so they're croaking a bit more than when it's a bit warmer. So I reckon you're going to be right. I think you'll be right in amongst it. I think perfect timing this year and Yeah, hopefully. So, but mate, I do apologise. We about revving up the rut, and you might not even be out there. So, I do apologise for that. But
That's
what's
fine.
plans for the rest of the year?
Rest of the year, just keeping on doing what I'm doing, learning. Taking it one hunt at a time, and trying to learn as much as I can. I have not set personal goals in terms of trophies for myself. I've set personal goals in terms of learning deer behavior. That's why I said, these days I get more excited just looking at them and observing them rather than shooting them. So that's my plan for the year. You know, just keeping on doing what I'm doing right now. So I hunt pretty much once a month. I try to do that, get out once a month and pretty much keep doing that. And and share as much as I can. That's another milestone that for myself too. I try to share as much knowledge of hunting on public land as much as I can to make it more appealing for the people, for the new hunters, or for the hunters who are struggling for success. And that's about it. Means I don't have any personal goals in terms of getting a stack. If they come my way, yeah, why not? I'll be more than happy to take one. But I don't. Every hunt is a trophy for me, is a memory for me. I don't treat a successful hunt with the size of the trophy or anything, to be honest.
No, look, I'm fairly similar. My goals are just to explore some new forests. I've got a couple of pegged out that I want to spend some time in and get to know them, and just get out there as much as possible, just to spend time in the bush and keep progressing with. Hopefully, get a few more down, and have that meat there. That's the goal for me. So. And then on top of that, I do want to hear that red roar and obviously hear those bucks croaking again. But as you said, for me, it's about the experiences. And, I look back at the rut, that experience of that buck running past croaking, and it's still imprinted in my head. That was so damn cool. That's something I'm going to remember forever. Did I shoot him? No. But did it matter? No, it didn't either. So for me, it was just such a cool experience that I'll remember. And, that's what I think hunting is all about too. So I'm definitely there for the experience and just being out in the bush. I love it. So, all right. Well, let everybody know where they can follow your stuff, because I'm a big fan. You represent hunters really, really well in a positive light. So if there's anyone out there listening to the podcast that doesn't know where to find you, where can they find you, mate?
So I do have a YouTube channel called Khan Adventures. I do have an Instagram page as well with the same name, Khan Adventures. So feel free to have a look, and if you like it, please leave a thumbs up. I love what I love doing, and I love sharing what I do. So it just gives me more motivation when people like what I do. And I always welcome criticism as well, because we're all human at the end of the day. We all make mistakes, and I completely appreciate any criticism that I receive. I take it positively, and I try to improve myself.
Mate, love it. Love the attitude. Really appreciate you coming on, and especially first night of Ramadan, because obviously breaking the fast the first day. So we recorded overnight and didn't give you much time to sort everything out. So I do really appreciate you coming on. Guys, go and check your stuff out. You won't be disappointed. Arun, thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it again. And listeners, bye for now. If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.